Have you ever thought traveling by light was the fastest way to travel? Well, in A Wrinkle in Time by Madeline Lange, that would be wrong. Mrs. Witch is the oldest and the wisest of the three witches. She is Mrs. Who and Mrs. What's-Its friend. Mrs. What's-It is the most important and the most popular of the three witches. Then there's Mrs. Who. She has a hard time putting things into her own words, so she quotes people. Even though it's kind of hard to understand, she makes it work. Then we've got the kids. Here's Calvin, a young athletic teenager. Here's Meg, a young, very sassy teenager. Then we've got Charles, a smart yet shy little boy. The theme of this story was adventure. I give this book a 5-star rating. On a dark and stormy night, a strange visitor arrives at the Murray's house, and after that, things will never be the same. Mrs. What's-It, the visitor, is Charles' friend, who lives in the supposedly haunted house in the back with their two friends, Mrs. Witch and Mrs. Who. Meg and Charles' dad is missing, and Mrs. Witch, Mrs. Who, and Mrs. What's-It claim to be taking them to him. Meg and Charles meet Calvin and become friends. Will they find their father? Find out in A Wrinkle in Time by Madeline Lange.